Court of Appeal is going to be in session a bit later this morning. They're going to be hearing appeals to get the Just Stop Oil protesters out of jail. They got some very stiff sentences running for quite a few years, last year and the year before, for protests like this, the ones which completely stopped the M25 for hours upon hours upon hours. Ambulances stuck in the queues, people not able to get to funerals. There were all sorts of knock-on effects. And the jail sentences reflected a huge public backlash against this. Chris Packham, who we'll be talking to later, is backing these appeals. Do you think there's any argument that those sentences were too stiff?
Yeah. Not stiff enough.
Yeah. Not stiff enough?
No, terrible, terrible. And if the Rachel
Why do you roll your eyes at
if
that?
she's talking about growth, how do those disputes gumming up roads, road networks, help growth? Terrible.
Well, it's like her plans for growth and backing the builders, not the blockers, is going to lead to more protests.
They're the blockers. Well, and also these people just alienate their cause.
Yep.
If people may have some sympathy, but they alienate it. But going on stage the other day with Sigourney Weaver and saying it outrages people.
If you create protests like that, it is counterproductive. There's no question. People aren't talking about your cause. They're talking against you and the disruption you've inflicted on people in their lives. But they're not violent. They don't attack people. But if you break court orders and you're banned from doing that type of protest, and then you do it again, courts take a very different view, which is why you get those big sentences.
You say they're not violent.
I think they are excessive.
You say they're not violent, but there's such a thing as passive aggression and passive violence. And, I mean, I would agree to the extent that I don't think you can compare, actually, throwing a can of tomato soup at a glass-covered painting and shutting the M25 for 8 hours. I think there's a huge difference, because if you do that, the latter, well, you're risking people dying. You do not know. We have this picture of an ambulance that was caught in the traffic in one of the demonstrations. There is no way that the people up on the gantry that were blocking the traffic could have any idea what was happening inside that ambulance. There could have been somebody in there who desperately needed to get to hospital for resuscitation and could have died. You simply don't know.
How would a police car get through?
Yeah.
Well, the answer was they couldn't.
And there are enough people already dying because the NHS was put on its knees by his lot when they were in government. I accept that. And I remember the footage of the woman who was going to see her mother, who was really ill in hospital, and she got blocked. She was at the front of the blockage, and she was pleading with them to let her through, and they wouldn't. And I thought they were cold-hearted and were losing public support doing that. But it's whether 5 years, when you haven't physically attacked anybody, you know, people will do less time in prison for beating people up. Beating them up pretty seriously. So is it proportionate to then put them behind bars for longer than somebody who's gone out with an iron bar and smashed somebody around?
That's not how sentences are given out, though. No. A judge doesn't sit there and think, what did someone who committed an assault get? They look at the sentencing guidelines for this particular
Susanna,
offence.
maybe we should have sentencing guidelines that reflect that. And the fact is, if you go around, you physically beat somebody up and you injure them, or you actually break into their home.
Yeah.
Which I would say is a bigger crime impacting you on that. That's terrible, but the roadworks block traffic.
These people could have contributed to people dying and suffering serious health issues.
But you haven't got any evidence of that.
Well, hang on. Well, we have actually got some very hard evidence.
Who died?
Somebody who was caught in one of those queues, somebody suffering an aggressive form of cancer. This is a matter of fact, Kevin. Missed an appointment at their cancer clinic, and they had to wait an extra 2 months for another appointment.
But no one died.
Is a risk.
And my heart and thoughts are with the person who missed.
They'll be so reassured by that.
Who missed? Look, don't keep talking over me, please. Yeah. The person who missed that appointment, I think that was, that's why they shouldn't do it. That's why I oppose what they do and think it is counterproductive. Yeah. But when they do it, is 5 years, and they've broken the law. Is 5 years appropriate? I don't think it is.
That was the longest. There was only one sentence of 5 years, and that was for Roger Hallam.
Yeah. He's the main organiser.
Yeah, you are the theoretician, said the judge, the ideas man. In my judgment, you sit at the very highest level of the conspiracy. Yes, that protest against those sentences, the appeal...
They're martyrs.
We'll be talking to Chris Packham just after 8 o'clock, and we'll be putting all those points to him, because he feels passionately that these guys should be out of jail right now.
Start with more on that now, because 16 activists who received prison terms of up to 5 years for for their involvement in 4 climate protests, including climbing gantries above motorways and throwing soup at a Van Gogh masterpiece, will appeal against the length of their sentences today. Lawyers for the group say the sentences were excessive and posed a serious threat to our democracy. Nick Dixon is at the Royal Courts of Justice with more. Good morning to you, Nick. So what outcome are their lawyers hoping for with this?
Hi, Charlotte. I think at best they're hoping for a slight reduction, a reduction of some kind at least in the length of the sentences. That is the hope at this stage. We'll see how things develop over the next 2 days with this hearing. The 16 activists received sentences in total of 41 years. Combined sentence, and the judge in one case saying to one of the convicted men, a 58-year-old man, that he went from being a concerned campaigner to a fanatic. Just look at some of the types of sentences that were handed down here for the activists. A 58-year-old man I mentioned there received 5 years in prison for conspiring to cause disruption on the M25. A 23-year-old woman got 2 years for throwing soup over a Vincent van Gogh painting, and a 78-year-old grandmother was jailed for 20 months for taking part in the M25 protest. Lawyers for the activists say these were unfair responses.
This is totally disproportionate and excessive. These are protesters, not hooligans. So it's tragic, really, to see that position having changed so quickly. These are people acting from a principled position, and they should not be in jail, let alone with our prisons in the extreme crisis that they are currently in.
Well, because there has been quite a strong reaction to these sentences one way or another, we have a statement from the Home Office this morning saying that there are a range of existing powers that enable the police to tackle unlawful behaviour during protests. Arrest and charging decisions are a matter for the police and the Crime Prosecution Service. You can perhaps hear there's a fair amount of noise this morning. Some of the supporters for these activists are here outside the court this morning. Some of them are photographers as well. There's some sort of performance going on as well. They say, campaigners, that there could be up to 1,000 people here supporting these people today. But Charlotte, it's a 2-day hearing, and we'll get an indication, at least over the next couple of days, of how long this could go on and when a decision either way will be reached.
Nick, thanks very much.